Was Luke a better Jedi than Anakin ever was? Greetings, students of the Force, and welcome back to the archives. He's just got too much of his father in him, said Aunt Beru. Much anger in him, like his father, remarked Yoda. Luke Skywalker didn't just inherit Anakin's potential, but so much more. He received Anakin's anger, his impatience, and his drive to save those that he was attached to. Many saw the echoes of the Chosen One within Luke, and they either greatly treasured it, or they greatly feared it. Yet, after their Jedi training, Luke and Anakin turned out to be nearly polar opposites from one another. There is something to be said about Luke simply being built differently, but there were marks of difference in how they accepted the Jedi way and how they approached it. Luke seemed to embrace the Jedi path and even perfect it, whereas Anakin struggled to reconcile with any of his teachings. In today's holocron, we wanted to analyze the difference in how Luke and Anakin approached their training, and try to find out if Luke truly ever was better than Anakin when it came to being a Jedi. The training began quite similarly, with both of them entering the realm of the Jedi when they were much older and formulated their own opinions and ideals about the wider galaxy. While Anakin was 9, Luke was around 19, which is an even more severe age to begin training. They were both naturally talented, but got a very rocky start, mainly due to the fact that they sought adventure and excitement, and that came with being a Jedi. As Yoda put it, a Jedi craves not these things. Because the guardians of peace and justice are meant to have the most serious of minds, the Skywalkers had a difficult time grasping the fundamental concepts of responsibility that came with being a Jedi. But that's something that echoes across all the Skywalker generations. Anakin well understood his talent, and even had problems with getting too cocky and arrogant when he was in class with other younglings. His peers despised him because of how easily he breezed through all of their lessons, and he believed in himself a little bit too much for their liking. Luke seemed to have the opposite problem. Indeed, he was a wide-eyed, naive boy from Tatooine, experiencing the freedom of the galaxy for the first time. However, Luke's problem wasn't his pride, but rather his lack of it. Luke had been taught his entire life by Uncle Owen to keep his feet on the ground and his head on straight. Owen was a very practical man, a farmer. If there was a problem with the moisture crop or vermin, there was a simple solution to taking care of it. He embraced simplicity and encouraged Luke to do the exact same. So while the young Skywalker had dreams of grandeur, he retained great inhibitions about his own abilities. He didn't believe he was capable of lifting a starship if he believed in himself enough to do it. Not yet, at least. The web of the Force that connected all living beings felt so large from Luke's perspective that he felt as though he may simply be swallowed up within it. So when his X-Wing got sunken into the swamp, and there is no crane or tractor beam handy, the last thing that Luke considered was that he had the ability to lift it out himself. After all, he still wasn't so sure the shot that he made on the Battle of Yavin wasn't just luck. So whether through overconfidence or insecurity, both Skywalkers snapped back at their teachers and were resistant to lessons that were being taught to them. However, the difference came in how the two reacted when they were proven wrong. Anakin continued to challenge the status quo, while Luke continued to learn and embrace it. We believe that this is one of the major differences between father and son. Beginning with the era in which the two of them learned, Anakin grew up in a time of plenty, and perhaps even overabundance of Jedi knowledge. Anakin had a traditional education within the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, complete with masters specializing in every subject, and a vast archive filled with shelves upon shelves of almost any information that he wanted about the Force or the Jedi. The masters were eager to teach the next generation all that there was to be to becoming a great Jedi Knight. And so it was hours of homework and study at the archive's terminals, seemingly endlessly guided meditation, along with the constant correction from several teachers. All of this before Anakin began his official apprenticeship under Obi-Wan, who would only continue to educate him off-world. The point to all of this is that Anakin was exhausted by all of this knowledge. Anakin had the freedom to accept or reject whatever information came his way by simply being flooded with it. Thousands of years of doctrine had been funneled into his brain in only a small amount of time. This was due to all the catch-up work that he had to do from joining the Order later in life. Typically, younglings spend their first few years as preteens in classes and groups of other younglings. They live a life of complete study until the time comes for them to take the initiate trials and officially be selected by a master. However, since Anakin joined at the age of 9 and already had a Jedi Master, he was out on a lot of time that the other younglings had. So while he was talented, Anakin was basically drowning in what he considered to be boring and monotonous homework, all of which he began to view as being not worth his time and beneath his raw talents. His son Luke, however, by contrast, lived in a time of lacking. Those masters had all been murdered, the archives were either destroyed or now seized by the Empire, and almost all mention of the Jedi and their teachings had been purged from the galaxy. An act which must have been incredibly satisfying for Sidious, considering the Jedi had once done the same thing to the Sith. Those data files, those holocrons that Anakin had once thought to be tedious busywork, was nothing short of precious treasures to Luke Skywalker. He had to scrape and scratch for every scrap of knowledge, so when Yoda and Ben told him something new, even if it was something he wasn't sure that he agreed with, Luke listened and accepted that lesson. He at least put forth an effort in trying to learn, to improve himself. Later, after the events of Empire Strikes Back, Luke would later go on a year-long journey of uncovering any sources of information about the Jedi. In that time, he'd find books such as the Journal of Obi-Wan, and it was from these that Luke would drag himself inch by inch toward becoming a real Jedi Knight. I think a perfect characterization of Luke and Anakin's opposite journeys can be seen in their construction of their lightsabers. After using his first lightsaber in the Battle of Geonosis, Anakin was able to construct his second one in the Jedi Temple. He could easily go back to Ilum and find a brand new crystal, use the vast resources that the Jedi had on hand to construct the perfect lightsaber to suit a brand new style. Luke, by contrast, on the other hand, didn't have a lightsaber for nearly a year, at least in Legends. In canon, he found a replacement lightsaber very quickly in a temple, but we digress. This was when he would find Obi-Wan Kenobi's journal. This included the schematics for a lightsaber. Luke had to scrounge around the junkyards of merchants on Mos Eisley, rather than collect his kyber from Ilum or another world. Luke had to craft a synthetic crystal from elements that he found using a little furnace in Ben Kenobi's hut. And even after all of this, Luke created a lightsaber so proficiently and successfully upon first try that Darth Vader admired its craftsmanship. This picture perfectly goes to show how, despite having everything that he needed, Anakin was a rebellious and a petulant Jedi that struggled with the precepts of the code. And yet, Luke came out the other end of the trial by famine and tempered and nearly perfect Jedi Knight. This primary difference is abundance versus lack of Jedi knowledge that would lead to the secondary reason the two reacted differently to their training. Both of them similarly had difficulties grasping certain concepts of the Jedi Code, particularly about attachment. The Jedi were indeed wrong about some things, but Anakin attempted to fix their lessons as he learned them. The Republic comics shows this how other Jedi Masters, or even Obi-Wan, tried to teach a young Anakin something, and he will either argue with them, or accept what they are saying to shut them up. In Anakin's own mind, if he doesn't understand something about being a Jedi then and there, that it must be wrong. This comes from his approach to machinery actually. When working with his hands on a starfighter, if something's not working quite right, then there was an issue that could be solved with a little tweak. Anakin tried to teach this approach to his Jedi training, tweaking here and adjusting there so that the lessons fit his own perspective rather than allowing himself to be molded by the Jedi. Luke, on the other hand, did have problems with certain Jedi teachings, and he learned the hard way what happens when you go against them. He was warned not to rush off and fight Lord Vader. They both told him that his friends were being used as bait, and he knew that he was walking into a trap, but he couldn't let his friends suffer. Vader used the very same defiance that once defined Anakin Skywalker in order to lure his son, and Luke would suffer for it. Luke would accept that Obi-Wan and Yoda said was true about attachment, that it could lead you to doing stupid and dangerous things from emotion. However, Luke refused to believe that attachment in its entirety was bad or wrong, so he meditated about this, took it to the Force. He had to operate the way a Jedi was supposed to. He had to be level-headed, and not let his attachment to his friends drive his actions, or drive him to be reckless. Hence, why it took a full year for him to get around to rescuing Han Solo from Jabba. He knew that he couldn't just go in there swinging like he used to. This would get him into trouble, and now, several people were dead because of Luke. In a way, Luke practiced the Jedi art of being detached from Han, having the patience to wait. Luke took to heart a special lesson: learn now, fix later. These are fundamentally the reasons why we believe that Luke turned out to be just a generally better Jedi than Anakin did. Sure, Senior Skywalker may have been stronger earlier on, more skilled in several, if not all areas, but his impatience and attitude did not bear the marks of a reasonable Jedi. Luke turned out to become the perfect incarnation of what the Jedi Order needed to produce, and he started his own Jedi Order, which amended the mistakes of the past. Anakin was indeed extremely powerful, but he was hot-headed and stubborn. Luke was calm, confirmative like water. He knew when it was time to move around an obstacle, or to increase his pressure to destroy it. This, I think, translates into their longevity. Patience produces perseverance, which is why Luke took longer to master his abilities, but ended up far more powerful in the end in Legends. Whereas Anakin's talent and his belief in them ended up destroying him, but he was more talented and more powerful early in his training. Out of everything, I think Anakin Skywalker would agree about Luke the most. How it was the Jedi that learned from their mistakes in part, that created the opportunity for Luke to become the perfect Jedi Grandmaster, even in an era lacking extreme amounts of Jedi lore. But anyway, and as always, let us know how you feel about this in the comments down below. Did we hit the nail on the head? Or do you think we were a bit too hard on Anakin in our analysis? We always love discussions on both Skywalkers here. And until next time, thank you so much for watching and supporting the channel, and may the Force be with you.